Okay,
So,
perfect.
yes, Joseph?
Sorry, please continue.
Oh, yeah, so I just wanted to welcome everyone to our webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we start. Please keep your questions until the end of the presentation, or if you have questions that are relevant to this specific content being discussed here, it's fine if you use the chat window for those, and then we can answer them either during the presentation or at the end. So I'll be happy to manage the questions. I'm going to give it over now to my colleague, Joseph. Go ahead, Joseph.
Thank you, Nabil. Welcome everyone to this webinar. Subject of today is JNC NETCONF for management applications. My name is Josef Miklos, and I'm member of the automation programmability team. This presentation should be, we'll see how quick we'll make it, at least half an hour, maybe a bit more. As Nabil mentioned, if you have any questions, please use the chat, and we will mention also some other options that you can use even after the meeting. So let's start. Okay. What about our agenda for today? I'll introduce JNC, what it is and where it's usable. We'll talk a bit about a lifetime of JNC. This is not a new application or new project, and we'll talk about some recent updates that have taken place. Then I'll do a brief walkthrough of repository. JNC is publicly available on GitHub, so we'll see what's available and what all we can use. Then I want to do some quick walk, so I'll show you source code of the example apps that are included in the JNC repository. And if we have time afterwards, we can go over the questions from chat. And I'll also show some links to the repository that you can use to discuss or raise issues, questions, and such. So let's start with what is JNC. This is an acronym I'll be using a lot today, and it stands for, in our case, Java NETCONF Client. So Java NETCONF Client is a combination of primarily two tools. It's a pyang plugin for Java code generation from the Yang model, and then it's a client library implemented in Java to allow communication with NETCONF servers. So it allows to exchange messages and then utilize the generated code from the pyang plugin output and allow for strongly typed classes and working with the code without having to manually build and work with the XML messages that are typical for the NETCONF payload. As I mentioned, this is not a new tool. First public commit in the mentioned repository is from year 2012. So there are definitely some legacy points or legacy factors when using this tool, but we'll go over everything and explain. So what's the schema of use, how we can use this tool, or when it can help us? In the next 1 or 2 slides, I may repeat some things, but it will be always a bit of different overview or a different point of view a bit. So here we can see a typical schema of the use case and where JNC fits in the whole picture of automation. So typically we have some devices here down on the bottom that we need to manage and some management applications up top. JNC in this case fits somewhere in the middle, so it allows to create more robust applications or integrate the southbound and northbound actors, and it utilizes or it allows to do this using the NETCONF component, which is alternative and recommended as a sort of better alternative for the automation needs compared to legacy CLIs, SNMP protocol, and similar. So it can be used to manage NETCONF devices and any NETCONF devices. It's not restricted to any specific producer or brand. Typically, it's a sort of core component or it sits inside of a management solution. So it's not completely standalone tool that you can use without anything else. NETCONF parts of the library exchange the messages with the server, and it also allows to sort of connect sort of pre-processed or more user-friendly classes automatically created from your device if it comes with the public Yang data model. This is a similar content, but from a different point of view. Here, a usage workflow. So as a first step, as I mentioned, we need some Yang modules of the device that we use as an input for pyang plugin. For example, some router.yang. We use this, and with the pyang plugin, we generate Java classes that can then be used in our Java application. So classes as a standalone ones are not usable, but we use them to work and define whatever processing we need in our manager written in Java, together with JNC library Java. And that allows to exchange messages with the end device, specifically to the used and provided Yang module. I mentioned this is not a new tool, so in a recent couple of months, there was a sort of revival of the JNC. Some of the customers were asking about Java integrations and what are the tools available. And we already had an existing code base and this tool from the past. Also, there are not that many publicly and freely available tools. And original authors have abandoned the package or the repository, and there were no new updates or new features being added and so on. So thus we sort of initiated revival and started addressing the most painful issues of the older packages. What we have done, this is not a full-time job, so the work is being done as the time allows. And with some time spent, we already updated some core dependencies like SSH Client that allows for a better set of the encryption protocols. We have added a NETCONF 1.1 session support, so now it's able to exchange messages through NETCONF 1.1 framing with the servers running this version of protocol. There was an ancient and sort of not fully covered build system. There were some partial end files and Maven build files. We have replaced these with Gradle. So you can use Gradle for either, and I'll mention it a bit later as well, for either Java library integration or even for generating the classes from the Yang modules. We have done some brief clean code effort, and we tried to reduce the number of variables, either Python lints using Python tools and Java lints from the both NETCONF library and generated classes as well. There was some cleanup, so we removed some legacy examples that were no longer running or required some external dependencies not available. And we updated and fixed some integration and unit tests for the code base that's inside. And as of currently running month, we are getting up the Maven repository and package publicly available. And also there is a pip package for pyang plugin that you can use. Here I forgot to update the slide. This is already available. And as described in the README file and will be mentioned later, you can already do some of this stuff without having to clone the repository and building it yourself. Okay, I mentioned some repository walkthrough. So one tip, if everything fails, check the README MD. So we try to update the most important information and describe everything in the README. Of course, you may not find everything you need. So there are GitHub discussions opened newly for the project. So you don't have to raise the issues. You can ask questions, look for tips and so on using the GitHub tools. The license of the tool is Apache version 2. We have stated in new requirements for the tools to be Java version 8 and Python version 3. This allowed for some tiny or small-scale cleanup, and we'll see if this then provides space for upgrading the code and simplifying even further. Code base was mentioned in the first initial slides, but it's publicly available on GitHub. And there are several files and directories. We won't go step by step over everything, of course. I just want to mention the core ones. So we have some examples. These are standalone Gradle applications or Gradle build files that you can run and see how the libraries work. Then we have a pyang JNC plugin. This allows to take your Yang modules and generate the classes mentioned as a first step in the whole process. And there is also a Gradle plugin for JNC library. So you don't have to build the library from source code yourself, but you can easily integrate it if you are familiar with Gradle build tools. And of course, when you investigate and check the repository, if you feel uncertain about anything, please use discussions for clarifications. Also, these items are described even with more details in the core README file. Okay, before we switch to demo, maybe let me quickly check the repository again. As of this moment, all the new updates and latest code is available in the development branch, but it shouldn't be more than, it shouldn't take long before this is merged into the master. And of course, everything will be updated and core README file will be updated as well. So here we are moving inside development, just in case you try to look for the news in the right after the meeting or in upcoming hours. Okay. So demo application. We won't go through some live running and examples. I just want to mention and show small excerpts of the code to show how this is connected together and what you can do with this. Of course, you can run the applications yourself, modify them and investigate. So let me quickly bring up, I have, this is for the intro, right? So here I have a Visual Studio Code opened with one of the examples called 0-intro. I had to do, because of some sort of problems caused by the update of this IDE, I mistakenly did shortly before the meeting. I had to do some manual modifications to allow all the running and jumping to definitions, but this is only accidental. So main application, if you are familiar with Java, then you will know most of this, but we want to briefly go over core details. So we have a main application with some main method. This can be basically anything, both graphical, CLI, some server daemon, whatever you need. And here we integrate the JNC Java library. So all the tail of JNCs provide some methods with descriptions, methods, classes, and so on that allow to work with the NETCONF devices, exchange information, check the capabilities, and so on. Core Gradle build file allows you to see or build and then use the Java docs, of course. So here I have opened the Java doc for the core library, and if you are familiar with Java, you know what to expect. So we can check all the informations, classes, methods, and so on. One of the Gradle tasks is for Java doc generation. And then we are importing some objects or classes that are generated. So I mentioned pyang plugin. If you are familiar with these tools, it allows, it's written in Python, and it allows to load the YANG file or multiple YANG files into memory and work with the YANG schema and generate whatever tools, codes, or intermediate formats you may need. In this case, we are using it to generate Java classes. As part of the build process of this application, here we have generated some example objects that are mapped to the, in this case, let me quickly open. We have a host.yang file that comes from our fictional device that has various containers, leaves, type definitions, and so on. And this YANG file is used to generate classes. For example, let's see the host list. Here we have a host container. So everything is automatically generated with some automated Javadoc as well. And you can use it to conveniently work without having to glue together XML pieces manually. So for example, here, if we check for host, if we check for host container, we see some auxiliary method to retrieve host, add host to the list, and so on. So no need to reinvent the wheel. And in our Java application, we can utilize these classes and build the object schema instead of XML itself. Same goes for other elements in the YANG module. So we have multiple modules. Even for the standardized YANG models, here we have some types and so on. So basically everything nicely available for code completion in the application. Let me open the main Java class. So as I mentioned, we import these generated modules, and here structure is done in a bit not hello world way. So some of these might sound a bit strange, but It's to allow some sort of structured running and using for the integration tests that we also have in the repository. Let's see the main method. So in the beginning, we enable some sort of namespaces for the library to work with. And then we can see that depending on some parameters we may want from CLI, here we can start subscriber, which is a concept you are probably familiar with, that listens to the changes in the NetConf and then can display queries for the changes that can display whatever is being changed or updated. So let's open the subscriber quickly. So this initializes device, and right. So this subscriber in our case just prints all the received and dispatched messages. So it's a simple helper to see what's being done between device server, between client and server. I have also the other example opened, but that one stopped working for me shortly before the meeting because of mistakenly updating some stuff. So let me just show without jumping to definitions. Should be this one, right? This is very similar structure. So we use the Yang library, same generated Yang module, but in this case, sorry, this is it. But in this case, we are retrieving configuration from the backend device without building any explicit XML. We are asking for some nodes in the configuration in the Yang model, and then we are just printing it to the console. Here it's using interfaces module. So we have IETF interfaces.yang, and it has interfaces container that we are reading from the backend server. So again, this Yang module used to generate classes, and then we can get config, and we see we are getting back not some artificial XML, but strongly typed class with all the types, members, and stuff defined according to the Yang module. I wanted to show you also the runtime, but as I mentioned, I had a tiny accident with my environment setup, and I didn't manage to get this running because of the sort of multiple Gradle versions running on my side. So this is sort of quick flight through the demo application. And of course, if you want to clarify something, please open some discussions on the repository. These are the links for JNC repo. A pyang tool mentioned is available as a pip package, so you don't have to build it or check it out explicitly and manually. But here is original repository for the tool if you are interested for more information. And I mentioned discussions several times. If you know and work with GitHub, it's available as one of the core tabs right up in the main page. It is. So far, there is not much new, but you are welcome to participate. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think we have some questions that were already answered. So if there are any more questions, please feel free to ask your question now. We can move on to questions at this time. So you have a question right now, Joseph, if you can read it.
Okay, let me find the
Chat window.
Chat window. I guess I need to stop sharing my screen. No, meeting controls.
I can.
Okay, okay, got it. Sorry,
okay.
Sorry, I got it. So, so there is a question about last update 6 years ago. So as I mentioned, and Jonas responded, the development branch has all the new stuff, and it will be very shortly merged into master and available. Also, the packages in the Maven repository and pip package is already available with the latest code, I believe, and same will be valid for the Gradle packages also very shortly. One more question. Should we care about how NetConf server is implemented while using JNC? Example, if server is implemented using confd or netoppear tool. So as I mentioned in the beginning, assuming that the NetConf server adheres to the specification and to the RFC, there should be no worries. This is tool agnostic, so it should work same way or with same ease for either of the mentioned tools, either confd, netoppear, or other alternatives as available. Examples that are available in the repository, they do use confd. You can use confd basic, for example, to run the examples and have the NetConf server, but this is only because the tool was readily available for us. You can, of course, set up your netoppear server if you are familiar with that one and run the example code base against that. Was this originally created for Open Daylight? Honestly, I haven't been around at the time this was created originally, but I believe no. I think it was created because to provide some sort of support for the NetConf protocol and allow users to more easily integrate. But since the beginning, it was not in any way, I believe, restricted or limited for either server tool. Is streaming supported like RESTconf plus SSE? Currently, no such thing. I'm not sure how this maps, for example, to notifications. Maybe if you raise the question in the discussions, we can get back to you a bit later when we clarify some things. But RESTconf as such is separate or standalone protocol. So if I had to answer now, I would say no currently. Do you see revival of the JNC being a long-term strategic thing, please? So as I mentioned, we started this with no explicit end goals. We just wanted to sort of revive the stuff, get it moving, and we add the things and update with some time available. So hard to say. I don't know if we have any clear or explicit answer for strategic plans for future. I believe that we will try to sort of address if there are some issues or questions and stuff. We will try to at least answer and see what can be done. But I have no internal information if there are any explicit goals or dedication.
I can. This is Jonas Johansson. I can add a little bit to that. So we have a strategic goal of providing and ensuring that NetConf and Yang interfaces are working and properly implemented, or I should rather say NetConf and Yang servers are working and properly implemented, and JNC fits into that goal. It is a tool that helps us testing NetConf and Yang servers.
So there is another question, Joseph, about supporting Yang version 1.1.
Right.
Does JNC support it?
So I'll just quickly read it. Is JNC supporting Yang version 1.1? How does JNC discover what Yang modules are supported by the server? So as I mentioned, one of the recent changes was adding support for 1.1 framing of NetConf. Except for that, Yang 1.1 comes with various changes to NetConf operations, of course, like new types of data stores and so on. And I think this has not been added at the moment, but as we have already framing available, it's open for upcoming changes as they are available. We'll see. But currently, I think the answer is no. If you assume, or if you meant to ask about those 1.1 protocol updates for various NetConf operations. How does JNC discover the Yang modules? So we are talking NetConf. When opening the NetConf session, there is capability exchange between clients and server. And if we quickly check the generated Java doc for the core JNC library, let me quickly find it here. We have capability section. So it has some definition of various capabilities, and these are initiated when you open new session with this library. So then you can check what's available. There are various methods and stuff that you can run on the capabilities element. So this is one of the first steps, or first step when you open connection to end server. Then before proceeding with any other requests and message exchange, you can see what's available. Okay, let me browse further.
So I'll help you, Joseph, with that. There is an embedded questions here, nested question. How does JNC discover what Yang modules are supported by the server? I don't know if you answered that one or not.
Right. It was just, I just stopped talking about this one. So there is the capabilities in the core library.
Okay, so it's a get schema. Is it get schema, NetConf using NetConf get schema, or something else?
It's the when the NetConf, well, sort of. I'm not sure if it's called get schema, but it's part of the hello message. Capabilities are exchanged with the hello messages. So
okay, so just a Yang library information is available in the whole hello message response reply, basically.
Sorry, now I realized what was the question specifically about. So it was about the Yang modules being streamed or retrieved live from the device. So this is currently not supported. You have to have the Yang modules available at the compilation time of your tool to generate the schemas from it. It's not live, or it's not available as a meta programming sort of.
Yeah, that might be a good feature, cool feature in the future for the client to get the schema live from the device.
Right. there was a warning, and of course, sorry, I misnamed the stuff. Yang version 1.1 and NETCONF are different things. So as I mentioned, NETCONF 1.1 framing we do support, but features of the Yang 1.1 are not currently covered.
Is the JNC stable to use to create a client for open RODEM and open config models? So my understanding is JNC is agnostic of the module, whether it's open config or open RODEM, as long as those modules follow standards, right?
Right. So maybe this would be a good idea for sort of example to see if it manages to compile and do all the stuff. So my guess is that it should not work, but I haven't tested this personally myself. So this is probably a good sort of tip for feature request issue on the GitHub repository.
Okay. Capability exchange. All right, so that's
right. So thanks to Edward for the clarification. Yeah, it was sort of confusion of Yang versus NetConf versions on my side, but he clarified in the chat. So Yang modules themselves are not part of the Hello Exchange that I was talking about.
Right. So that's Yang library. So you're saying that JNC at its current state does not work with Yang 1.1 modules, or does it work? It works with Yang the one. It just ignores the differences, right? It ignores the version number. So that's something maybe we can check.
Right.
Unless you know the answer.
I'm uncertain currently because this one thing I have not checked explicitly, so that's a good question and it has to be clarified.
So there is a question regarding comparison of JNC with NC clients. Are there advantages that JNC provides if compared with NC clients? Do you know of any differences there?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the feature set, so I cannot answer this one.
Yeah. So NC client, that's something different. Yeah, so there's still just conversation here about how to get the Yang models supported by the device in JNC. All right, I don't see any other questions. If there are no more questions, we can close this session. Of course, I'll be providing the recording maybe early next week, Monday or Tuesday or around that time frame. So if there are any questions later on, you can always contact us via the repo if there are specific JNC related questions or problem reporting, issue reporting. Yeah. So with that, thank you, Joseph, for a great presentation, and thank you all for attending today. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.